Good afternoon. Privileged to be talking at TEDxIRMA. I was told this is about dreaming beyond. It's dreaming beyond a life with political boundaries drawn on the surface of the earth by man. The wild world, a world where all of the other creatures on this planet live, is a world without political boundaries. And my dream was to see that these creatures would exist in freedom and in safety across the entire earth. My focus was the great cats. I have a doctorate on the great cats. And I want to quickly run over the great cats that I study and the ones that I know. And also to remind you just how few they are. The tiger, somewhere less than 4,000. Lions, somewhere less than 20,000. Jaguars, an approximate 64,000. The leopard, 10,000. About 50,000 pumas or cougars. About 7,000 cheetahs. A guess that there's about 8,000 snow leopards, maybe 10,000 clouded leopards. And it's also true that for us, protecting biodiversity in recent years has become much less about securing new protected areas in pristine habitat and more about making room for wildlife on the margins of our own urbanized existence. Conservation now means modifying human landscapes to do double duty as wildlife habitat, or more accurately, to continue functioning as habitat for wildlife, even as humans take over these habitats for highways, farms, linear developments, and industry. There's simply no other place for animals to live. And it's finally about finding room for wildlife on the margins of human development. We've all been through COVID, and we saw when man went indoors how wildlife suddenly appeared on the streets. Here in Gujarat, you had lions appear in all sorts of places, including docks. And lions have now spread to areas and are walking through towns. This is not because of any other reason. It's because humans now exist in areas where lions always existed. So life as the wildlife knew it has changed. And they don't understand that we've drawn boundaries and made marks which only us humans recognize. So the threats to wildlife include habitat loss and fragmentation, climate change, poaching, illegal trophy hunting, trade in body parts, live animal trade, bushmeat extraction, killing due to human-cat conflict, prey-based loss, development and wildlife conflict, zoonosis, and feral dog populations that spread disease. This is the area which has the greatest population of humans on planet Earth. It also has all of the world's tigers in the wild. So it's really important to remember that tigers make their way around humans wherever they are. And these pictures that were taken by Steve Winter and Robin show you just what they're dealing with. This is a tiger in the Nilgiri Hills with the whole town behind it looking at that. The previous picture was in the center of Mumbai. Leopards now have to find their way through tea and coffee estates. And if you look at what is happening, that same circle that I talked about is in the deep blue and the bright blue in Asia, where the maximum human-wildlife conflicts occur. This is a typical picture of rural India. A big cat in the center of agricultural fields, or even in the middle of a village. And what we haven't done in India is to address this issue. We haven't talked about training people how to behave when they come into contact with wildlife, or indeed a big cat. In human-dominated landscapes, big cats often find prey very difficult. So they will take agricultural animals. And we don't do enough to train our villagers how to guard against them. This is something that's of particular relevance here in IRMA, because cattle is such an important part of your existence and your reason for being there. And this is one of the reasons why the greatest conflict takes place between wild animals and humans, livestock predation. One of the most innovative yet simple things that we discovered was using dogs to guard wildlife. The Cheetah Conservation Trust in Namibia cut down the death of cheetah populations by a huge amount, simply by introducing dogs that guarded wildlife and warded off the cheetahs. So there's simple solutions. Making a pen, which is cat-proof, using dogs. Simple things that keep them away from trouble and prevent the cats from being killed. Human-wildlife conflict is now becoming apparent every day in this country. With the doubling of the tiger population that we're so proud of, tigers are spilling out of protected areas. And it's not just tigers. Bear, wild boar, leopard, elephant. There is conflict every day. And I think every day there is a big cat or a human that is killed due to this conflict. And this is the stark reality that we live with. Wildlife also has to face unprecedented amounts of poaching and hunting. Consumptive use of wildlife is talked about, but overconsumption is leading to extinctions of populations. In India, we all know the story of the tigers in Panna and Sariska, where there were local extinctions and tigers were wiped out, but this is also true all across the world. I've got pictures on here for lions. I've got a pet cheetah with a sheikh sitting somewhere in the Middle East, and another person in the Middle East with 3 baby cheetah cubs, where cubs are forcibly taken away. The mother is killed, the cubs are taken away and traded. We've got a clouded leopard that is there from Malaysia. So these are big issues, and they're real issues, issues that we deal with on a daily basis when you're working in wildlife conservation. And it doesn't stop there. Linear structures such as railways and roads have become a big issue. And we're now focusing on working with policy and decision makers, working with planners and managers to see how we can find solutions to the deaths that happen when these linear developments intersect a landscape. So on the top right side, you've got an overbridge, which is for wildlife to cross busy highways. Underpasses, overbridges, elevated roads, elevated highways, all make a difference to what is going on. And there have been many studies that are being done in India and across the world which show how effective these infrastructural changes are. And it's, the old adage, prevention is better than cure. If we build this in while creating new infrastructure, it'll be less problematic later. So we've been working very closely now to promote all of this with the people who are building these infrastructures, with the governments, with the local authorities, to change the way we handle development. COVID introduced us to a new set of problems. It introduced us to a new word, zoonosis. And zoonotic diseases now are something that have become a reality for us. All of us know about COVID, but do we remember that there's Ebola, there's rabies, there's a huge pandemic waiting to happen, which has the potential of being bigger than COVID, avian flu. I was in the North Pole and the South Pole some time ago, and I was studying the effects of climate change and quite inadvertently found out about avian flu. Avian flu has now spread from birds to mammals. The polar bears have it, seals have it, and because these are areas from which migration happens to different continents across the planet, the spread of the disease can be something that can really expand to beyond belief. And we're doing almost nothing about it. Wet markets and bushmeat extraction exacerbates the spread of zoonotic disease. Rabies is a huge problem across all of these parts of the world. I recently met a friend who had been up in Ladakh, and 2 feral dogs were tearing apart marmots. The smaller mammals are absolutely no challenge for them. As roads are being built and labor is being used to build these roads across remote landscapes, especially in places like the Himalayas, feral dogs follow these labor and enter into areas where they had never gone before. They're also feeding off waste produced by the tourism industry and waste dumps that belong to the army. This is becoming a really big problem for us. And these same waste dumps are now attracting bear, they're attracting snow leopards, they're attracting wolves. The dogs are now breeding with the wolves. We've had the lion deaths here in Gujarat, you know about those. And you know that in Hyderabad, we've had big cats affected by COVID. It doesn't end there. We also have habitat fragmentation. And agricultural farming, over-extraction of forest resources can lead to problems like this. Species like elephants, species like orangutans, species like the big cats are really affected by things like this. The fragmented reality that they have to live with is something that we tend to ignore and forget in our quest for producing crops and to not only feed us, but also to feed the cattle that is necessary for dairy and meat production for so much of the world. Another thing that we need to understand is how rapidly habitat is changing because of desertification. Desertification is a really harsh ground reality for many parts of the world. In Africa, the Sahara is expanding into the Sahel, and it's changing things very, very rapidly. Climate change is also leading to global warming, which is leading to the spread of fires across huge tracts of forest. Everybody knows about the recent fires in California, and you'll remember that the Amazon had them, Australia had them, the Himalayas has had them in so many places. This is something that you can now see from outer space. You can take pictures of the fires burning, and you know how things are changing across the planet. So for me, as a conservation ecologist, a lot of my work has been on linking landscapes, on corridors and connectivity, not only across rural landscapes, but also about urban landscapes. So we're planning green belts. We're working with, through planning and through organizations like the Niti Aayog, like the government bodies, for things like bee highways, for underpasses for crabs, for little turtle crossing points under railway lines, for salmon ladders, fish ladders, creating and reusing old infrastructures like railway lines in the center of New York to create the highway, and basically just creating space for animals to move. In India now, we've got this great elevated road across central India over Pench National Park for animal movement to be unaffected by this national highway. In Kenya, they have the same thing as well. And it's not just small spaces. For migratory birds, butterflies, bees, you need to think about how far they can travel, where they need to rest, what they need to do. So we're talking about things like that. Linkages for orangutans across agricultural fields, especially in areas where there is palm oil farming. In the extreme regions, in the Arctic, for polar bear migration, we're looking at what to do and how to deal with these issues. In India, we have the problem of large elephant herd migrations. These now go over linear infrastructure, it goes through towns and villages. So we now have to start dealing with what is going to happen to these animals, because there's often conflict. If you remember, there was that pineapple bomb somebody fed an elephant because it had entered habitation. This is all the result of conflict like this, and this is part of the problem that we're looking to address. We do this with designing corridors. We use technologies like drones, camera traps, GPS trackers, satellite imagery, for ensuring that these habitats are usable and are being, connecting important areas of wildlife use. This includes the Delhi-Dehradun Expressway, which is the first highway with wildlife protection on it all along the way. We also need to look at transboundary linkages. So we're looking at things across India, Nepal, India, Bhutan, across the whole of the Himalayas for the snow leopards, looking at how tigers are now using transboundary areas and going from one country to the other, and how we can work on it. Also for things like gorillas. Rhinos, there's a wonderful program called Rhinos Without Borders. This is showing you how we have to plan for snow leopards. And then things like the great green wall of Africa, which is about 100 million hectares of land which has been greened to prevent things. But we've got good news also. I mean, it's not just bad news. And wildlife tourism has come in a big way. We're earning a lot of money. We're doing reintroductions. We're doing village relocations. And of course, we're signatories to many, many important conventions. So I just want to end by saying, please remember what Chief Seattle said. If all the beasts were gone, men would die from a great loneliness of spirit. For whatever happens to the beasts also happens to man. All things are connected. Whatever befalls the earth befalls the sons and daughters of the earth. Thank you.